What's up YouTube? I'm here to do my predictions for UFC 183. Here we go, let's start at the bottom. First fight is Thiago Santos versus Andy Enns. Andy Enns, you know, he's pretty decent everywhere, but he's just not good at mixing it up, and I think he's confident in his striking, but he's not a good striker. And I think Thiago Santos is a much better striker, and he'll be able to keep on the feet. So even though I think Andy Enns has a better jiu-jitsu, I don't think that's gonna even be a factor in this fight. So I think Thiago Santos is gonna win by UD. I think his is just much better, and I don't think this fight's ever gonna hit the ground. Next we got Richard Mourier versus Ildemar Alcantara, and I got Alcantara. I think he's just the bigger fighter. He's fought more times in the UFC, and I think he'll just be able to grind out a decision. He's kind of boring. I think he'll just be able to grind it out. Next, we got Diego Brandao versus Jimmy Hedis, and this fight is kind of gonna come down to who's got the better conditioning, because both guys really don't have good conditioning. So they're both kind of first-round fighters. They both fade. It's tough because I think Hedis probably has the better chin, but I think Brandao's the better fighter. They're both really good jiu-jitsu guys, but I think Diego's got the better boxing. So, I'm going to go with Diego, but I wouldn't be surprised at all if Jimmy won this fight, because like I said, the further this fight goes, it's just going to come down to who's got the better conditioning. And, if one of these guys can just get a takedown and end up on top in the third, if it goes to the third, I think that person would probably get like a rear naked choke win. I'm going to go with Diego though, like I said, but I wouldn't be surprised at all if Jimmy wins this one. Next, we got Rafael Natal versus Tom Watson, and I see this fight being a lot like the Talis Lathis fight. The only way I don't think Natal wins this one is if his conditioning is just rubbish, and he just gasses by the third and Tom just knocks him out. But unless that happens, I think Rafael Natal will be able to do what Talis Lathis does, just get takedowns, take his back, and grind out a decision win. Next, we got Ian McCall versus John Lineker. And to me, this is the type of fight that's going to favor Ian McCall, because John Lineker is the type of guy that likes to just sit on his punches and throw, and Ian McCall is the guy who kind of fights like Frankie Edgar. He likes to move around a lot and throw punches from the outside and go in and out real quick, and I think his wrestling will also be a factor. I don't think John Lineker will be able to stuff him after the first round. I think just like Cub Swanson, I think the later this goes, the harder it'll be for Lineker to keep up with McCall. So we got McCall winning, I think, third round submission. Next, we got Ed Herman versus Derek Brunson. And, I know Derek Brunson got injured the first fight. That's why it never happened. He got injured before the fight ever took place, or he got sick or something. But I would pick Ed Herman. I think the fact that he's had more time to prepare for this fight will help him. I think he was the more well-rounded fighter going into the first one. The only thing was his wrestling was the only thing could Derek Brunson hold him down and grind out a decision. I think with more time to prepare, his wrestling defense will be even better, and he should be able to. I wouldn't be surprised if Ed Herman knocks him out. So I'm gonna pick Ed Herman by KO. Next we got Miesha Tate versus Sara McMann. To me, Miesha Tate's shown in her last couple of fights that her wrestling is not up to par with some of the better wrestlers. I think she's a good fighter, but her last two fights, I just felt like her wrestling was not, against Rin. I can't remember the Japanese chick, but the Japanese chick, if she was a little bit bigger, I think she would have won that fight. I just think Miesha Tate was just so much bigger than her that she couldn't really control her. And then against Liz Carmouche was able to control her because she was bigger, but then she gassed. I don't think Sara McMann's gonna gas, and I think she's big enough where Miesha Tate won't just be able to use her size to negate the takedown. So I think Sara McMann grinds out a decision win. I think her wrestling's a lot better. Main card, we got Jordan Meehan versus Thiago Alves, and this fight's weird just because I don't know about Thiago. He hasn't. He's fought like 3 times in the last 3 years. And it's not because he's not active. It's just because he gets hurt. So it's tough. If Thiago was more active, it'd be easier for me to make a prediction. But because he hasn't, I'm gonna have to go with Jordan. I think Jordan just wins by decision. I think the fact that he is more active and I've seen him more, he'll probably just I think he'll be on more point with his strikes than Thiago. So I've got, this could be fight of the night. I think this might be the fight of the night. It's either gonna be this or Joe Lozon versus Al Iaquinta. So I got Mian. I'm gonna pick him by decision. Next we got Thales Leites versus Tim Boetsch. And Tim Boetsch has looked like rubbish in all of his last like 5 fights. I mean, the fight with Brad Tavares, he's losing until he caught him. I thought it was pretty one-sided. And then, you know, the fight with CB Dollaway, I thought he lost. And then the other 3 fights were losses. So I think Thales Leites wins this fight by knockout. I think Thales Leites is starting to hit his second wind in his career. And I think his boxing's looked better than it's ever looked. And I think I would be surprised at all if he wins by knockout. So I'm going to pick Thales Leites first round, knockout. Next we got Joe Lozon versus Al Iaquinta. And I think Al Iaquinta's looked really good recently, but he's been fighting guys that want to box with him. I think his biggest weakness has always been his submission defense, and Joe Lozon is really good at getting fights to the ground, whether he's on top or on bottom. And once the fight gets to the ground, you know, there's a good chance he's going to submit you. And, you know, it's just one of those things where if you can't stop him from taking him down, and if you can't stop the submission attempt, you're going to lose. So I'm going to pick Joe Lozon. I think sooner or later he's going to get a takedown, and when he does, he's going to catch Al on something. Next, we got Tyron Woodley versus Kelvin Gastelum. And to me, this fight, you know, they're doing this on purpose to give Kelvin the win, because Tyron Woodley, even though I think he's probably a little bit better of an athlete, I think he's going to gas, and Kelvin isn't. And I think when he starts to gas, Kelvin will eventually take his back and get in the rear naked choke. I think Tyron Woodley will probably win the fight the whole way up until that point, but once he starts to fade, Kelvin's going to jump on him. So I'm going to say late second, early third, rear naked choke win for Kelvin. I just think the conditioning is going to be on his side, and that's always something Tyron's struggled with. Okay, main event. Anderson Silva versus Nick Diaz. I don't know. I honestly don't. I think that this fight's all gonna depend, because I think people just expect it to be a striking fight, but if it goes to the ground, Nick Diaz has got a huge advantage everywhere. I think he's a much higher level black belt than Anderson is. I don't think Anderson's ever submitted a black belt as with Nick Diaz. I've seen him submit a couple. So, you know, that's something you gotta factor in. What if this fight does go to the ground? What if Nick Diaz takes Anderson's back, or like catches him in a Kimura or something? And that's what I think is gonna happen. I think people are completely overlooking the grappling aspect of this fight, and I would be surprised if Nick Diaz wins by submission. That's what I'm gonna say. I think Nick Diaz wins by submission. I think this fight hits the ground sooner or later, and the difference in their black belts, you know, Anderson Silva, I don't know why he's a black belt. I don't think he's black belt level jiu-jitsu. That's where Nick Diaz is. So I'm gonna pick I'm gonna pick Nick Diaz by submission. Thanks for watching, guys. Please like and subscribe.